It's a classic formula for a scene. The fugitive is good, his pursuers are evil, and innocent bystanders are caught in the middle. The Obi-Wan Kenobi show and the game Jedi Fallen Order both take a stab at this archetype, and while one tells a powerful, succinct story through its environment, character presentation, dialogue, and setup and payoff, the other falls flat on its face in every aspect. Taking a closer look at these two scenes will reveal why Fallen Orders worked so well and left a strong impression on its audience, whereas the scene from Kenobi was lacking weight and ultimately irrelevant. The setting of the Fallen Order scene is appropriately dark and ominous, but it's not over the top. It's gloomy, rain is falling, and it takes place in a rocky, bare setting. Baraka was already pretty dreary, but it at least had the spectacle of huge Republic ships, piles of droid pieces and clone helmets, and downed Jedi fighters to marvel at. Now it's hard, unforgiving, with nothing to break up the gravity of the situation. The Kenobi scene takes place in a town on Tatooine. It's a bland, plain scene with no environmental storytelling elements. This scene didn't need to happen here. It has nothing to do with Obi-Wan. The Inquisitors are hunting an entirely different Jedi. If the main point of this scene is to build the characters of the Inquisitors, it could have been anywhere. Maybe on a beautiful green planet whose grass is scorched and trampled by the Inquisitor ship. Maybe it happens in a factory where there's dangerous equipment, sparks flying, the background noise of machinery. Just something that's not the drab boringness of Tatooine. Of course, visuals don't make the whole environment, so let's listen to how the scenes are set up. Fallen Order's ambiance began with the visuals and is enhanced by the music. The sound of the TIE Interceptor. Before we even see the Inquisitors, and long before we hear them speak, it evokes emotions of fear and foreboding. Notice how much prominence sound is given as the second sister makes her entrance. Even her landing on the ground has this meaty, impactful thud. Meanwhile, on Tatooine, we just start with the fifth brother yelling at civilians. The music does kind of strike a dark tone now, but it's this tiny background feature that soon fades away, only to come back just as quietly.
Know why we are here.
It barely factors in at all, except to say, hey, this isn't a good thing. It doesn't even try to hint at what's to come. It's not given time to build towards anything. It fails to evoke emotion in the audience. It just seems like there was no effort put into it. Why exactly are the Inquisitors interrogating these people in this area? I mean, Reva walks right past a bunch of people on the way in. She completely ignores them. I mean, how does she know they don't know anything? Not to mention, there have to be a dozen alleyways, doorways, and other alcoves in this area someone could just slip away into during all of this. And by contrast, the group of unfortunates on Bracca are specifically chosen. They're herded by the stormtroopers into a group of purge troopers, and then have to face off with the Inquisitors on a barren landscape with nowhere to hide. Why don't Reva and the fifth brother have stormtroopers with them? Especially when they're dealing with a much larger population in a city center. It seems like a bad idea to have your most valuable Jedi hunting assets on a planet that isn't Empire controlled with no support from foot soldiers. Back to the why here, why them questions. The Inquisitors don't give any indication that they can sense a Jedi in the nearby area. Just,
There's a Jedi hiding on this planet.
in Fallen Order, not only does Kala use the Force, presumably for the first time in 5 years, to save Prof, he has a vision of his master, representing his reconnection with the Force.
Apprentice, mark well and listen.
Master.
Trust only in the Force.
It's a powerful scene, and it makes sense that he draw attention to himself and those around him. Obi-Wan hasn't done that. The Inquisitors don't seem to realize a Jedi is nearby. In their first scene, they couldn't detect the Jedi sitting in the cafe with them until they literally saw him using the Force. This scene would have made a lot more sense if the Inquisitors had sensed a Force user, or been given a tip, or just tracked that other Jedi to this area. But no, there's no explanation shown or told. It's just sheer coincidence that they end up near Obi-Wan, and we all know coincidence is the best driver of a plot. The pacing of the Fallen Order scene is classic. It starts slow. Intrigue builds, the characters are wondering what's about to happen. The second sister is revealed, the ominous music rises to a crescendo. Tensions continue to rise as the Inquisitor explains why they're here and the consequences of failing to comply.
We seek a dangerous fugitive, a devotee of the treasonous Jedi Order. Turn yourself in, or everyone present shall face summary execution.
The scene escalates further as Prof steps out of line and delivers his final words.
To the Empire, we're all just expendable.
Then it explodes with his death, Cal's reaction, capture, and immediate haphazard escape. The scene has a steady process of building upon itself until detonation and then fallout. By contrast, the pacing of the Kenobi scene is all over the place. It starts in much the same way, and then it suddenly escalates into someone getting a hand chopped off. But instead of devolving into panic and disarray, it just goes right back to its calm, measured pace.
All we want is information.
And then we get another slower, gradual build as Reva interrogates Owen, and then an explosion when Reva loses her cool.
Tell me where the Jedi is, or this man and his family die.
And then she's back to calm and measured, and then she starts to escalate again, only to get abruptly shut down.
No!
Her threat has no payoff, no consequences. It just stops because the fifth brother decides that, no, the second time she draws her lightsaber, that's when she's gone too far. Alright, I'll get to the Inquisitors in a moment, but it's worthwhile to note the sheer lack of effort that went into casting this crowd that gets rounded up by the Inquisitors. Take a look at them. Hey, come on, Star Wars, where's that famed diversity you were boasting about? All I see is a bunch of ordinary people who were told to show up wearing the scarf they least like. I found only two supposed non-humans in this crowd. This lady with green makeup around her eyes and this kid in a cheap plague doctor mask. Come on. Fallen Order's cast of characters is mostly humans, but there are two characters with non-standard color skin. There's Prof, and then there's this guy who is either a droid or can't breathe Bracca's atmosphere. I don't know. Sure, it's a lot easier for game animators to just animate different looking characters. TV quality CGI or makeup and costuming are certainly more expensive and time consuming, but the original Star Wars managed it 45 years ago. Just look at all the variety of outfits and species in the Mos Eisley Cantina. This is the ethnic makeup of Tatooine, but no, says the Kenobi show, we're fine with just humans. I mean, they couldn't even put a Jawa into that scene. Those things are everywhere on Tatooine. Ugh. Anyhow, on to the Inquisitors. Second sister is sleek and lithe. Her uniform is smooth, it's shiny, rain rolls right off of it. She has the Imperial emblem emblazoned proudly on both shoulders of her cape. She has a smaller comma, somewhat reminiscent of ARC troopers, and the Ninth Sister and Purge troopers also have those commas, so it's kind of this common uniform. And of course, Second Sister has a mask, because why wouldn't she? She's a Star Wars villain. She has a mask. Makes sense. The design of her mask is really cool. Its shape is akin to Imperial shuttles, and that thin red line is really a menacing visage. Reva looks like a normal person in a knockoff Second Sister costume that charges extra for the mask. Her front is this jumbled mesh of pieces that don't fit together well. She only has the Imperial symbol on one shoulder, and it's etched in black on a black uniform. It escaped me until I specifically looked for it after seeing Trilla's uniform. The red lights on Reva's belt and gauntlet don't glow at all. They just look like stickers. Her arms and legs don't have the same sheen as Second Sister's. They just look like ordinary cloth. Her pants aren't even all black. They're gray in the middle. Why are they gray there? Darth Vader didn't have half gray pants. And why doesn't she have a mask? This is not intimidating. This is. Faces have expressions which can be read. Faces show emotion and betray thoughts. Faces give away where one is looking. People understand faces. They're comfortable with faces. Put your mysterious, intimidating character behind a mask and you make her face that much more impactful when it comes time to show it. It may seem trite and overwrought, but there's a reason villains wear masks. We fear what we don't understand, what we can't see, and we are hard-pressed to understand someone whose face we've never seen. Reva especially should be hidden behind a mask considering she's almost certainly a former Padawan, and there's a non-zero chance she runs into someone who knows her and might be able to sympathize with her or plan her weaknesses. Unless your antagonist looks like this, put him or her in a mask, Disney. I'll forgive you for Giancarlo Espinosa, but that's only because I've seen Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and am instinctively terrified of that man wherever he pops up. Otherwise, use the masks. They're basically your brand, Star Wars. Use them. Moving on from how characters look to how they talk, I can sum up the dialogue section of this comparison in 3 words. Less is more. Second Sister does not waste time. She knows who she wants is in front of her, and she makes the stakes very clear right away.
Summary. Execution.
Reva's dialogue in this scene is quite literally all unnecessary. The fifth brother tells everyone what they need to know right at the start.
Know why we are here.
And then Reva stretches it out needlessly by threatening severe corporal punishment for some unspecified offense,
Hands go first.
and then meting out that punishment when this poor lady tries to play lawyer. Also, doesn't Reva know that chopping someone's hand off in Star Wars is little more than a mild inconvenience? Her bloodlust not sated, Reva threatens to murder an entire family because she's certain someone there has information about the Jedi? Maybe? She doesn't seem to greatly suspect Owen or think he has some information. He was just dumb enough to look her in the eye and draw her ire. She's just flailing about aimlessly, in stark contrast to Trilla's cold, calculated statements.
Summary. Execution.
So she lectures everyone about how the Jedi failed and abandoned them, which is odd, because she's on Tatooine, a system well established in Star Wars as being under control of the Hutts, who, last time I checked, are not Jedi. The citizens of Tatooine were basically unaffected by the events of the Clone Wars and the downfall of the Jedi Order. A fact Reva should probably know, considering she was, presumably, at once a Jedi Padawan herself. Of course, the real meat of the scene is supposed to be Reva threatening Owen and his family.
Tell me where the Jedi is, or this man and his family die.
But it's an empty threat. Not because Reva doesn't mean it, she clearly has no problem being violent with little provocation, but because the audience knows it won't happen. We know exactly how and when Owen and Maru die. We know Luke's whole story, so we have absolutely no fear that Reva will carry out her threat. We don't have to fear Obi-Wan will reveal himself and put himself in harm's way because we know there's no need for him to. There is emotional weight, however, behind the threat and murder in Fallen Order. As the player/audience, we can safely assume that Cal will survive this encounter, but what about everyone else? What about Prof, Cal's buddy who's been looking out for him, who wants him to have a life that won't end as Prof's is ending?
You gotta move on and live your life. Find your destiny.
A friend whose life Cal just saved. Cal hesitates when he's called upon to give himself up, as is human, but Prof doesn't.
I think it's time someone came forward.
Prof's final monologue, without stating it directly, tells how he has no future, no hope for himself.
Then came the Empire. And engineers became scrappers.
It's in stark contrast to the conversation he had with Cal earlier, where he expresses that Cal has a lot left ahead of him.
To the Empire, we're all just expendable.
Yes. You are.
Prof gives his life to give Cal and everyone else in that lineup another chance. His death matters. Maybe not in the way he intended it to, but it matters. It angers Cal and the audience, who, even in a short time, have come to know and like Prof. When Prof put himself in harm's way, the audience doesn't know what will happen next, even if they have a good guess. When Owen draws Reva's attention, we know nothing will happen to him. She just wastes everyone's time, including that of the audience, until the fifth brother continues his sentence from earlier and plops down the hollow of the Jedi. I think this moment's supposed to be one of relief for Obi-Wan and Owen, as they realize that neither Obi-Wan or Luke were the target of the Inquisitor's search, but it misses its mark because the audience knew all along exactly who the Inquisitors were hunting, so we weren't worried at all about Luke or Obi-Wan. The scene in Kenobi just carries no emotional weight. Reva's ranting and raving makes it far longer than it needs to be, and it doesn't drive the plot at all. Cal chooses in one instant to change the whole course of his life, from safe, if boring, stability to chaos and uncertainty. No one's forced to make a choice on Tatooine. None of the protagonists make any sort of choice. The scene just happens, and then everyone goes back to business as usual. Listen to how Second Sister delivers these lines.
We seek a dangerous fugitive. This is no common anarchist, but a devotee of the treasonous Jedi Order. Failure to turn over this traitor will result in a charge of sedition. Turn yourself in, or everyone present shall face summary execution.
She is icily calm, completely in control. The changes in her tone as she murders Prof and blocks Cal's attack are nuanced, subtle.
Yes. Look at this. A lightsaber.
Continuing to exude confidence while expressing contempt and satisfaction. Reva, on the other hand, is an absolute roller coaster. She goes from violently angry to almost pleading in the span of 2 seconds.
All we want is information.
Then back to homicidal rage before calmly delivering an inaccurate history lesson. It's a mess. She's like a bully who's trying to be nice to get the things she wants, but she just can't help her anger. Sith are supposed to use their feelings, fear, anger, their hatred, to harness them and become more powerful because of them, rather than suppress or ignore them like the Jedi do.
Good, Anakin, good.
That's what Trilla demonstrates in Fallen Order. She hates the Jedi. She wants them dead, but she doesn't allow that hatred to boil over into pointless rage like Reva does. I'm not sure whether to blame the writing, directing, acting, or all three for this mess of a choice in Kenobi, but man, is it a poor example of how Inquisitors should act. The scene in Fallen Order succeeds because it establishes a dark, ominous environment, uses music and sound effectively, has dialogue that is concise without being too on the nose, slowly builds to an explosion, and has a setup and payoff with real emotional weight behind the choices made by the characters. The Kenobi scene fails to deliver that same emotional weight. There's no payoff for the setup. Nothing that the characters say or do really matters, and yet the dialogue just drags on.
All we want is information.
The pacing is haphazard, the music's entirely relegated to the background if it's there at all, and the setting could not be more standard and uninteresting. Video games often lack in the storytelling department because their main job is to provide entertaining gameplay. Yeah, there are lots of games with great stories and characters, but those elements usually don't take center stage. They're certainly not the top priority during development. Movies and TV shows have literally one job: tell a good story. So when a video game scene runs circles around a parallel scene in your show, you've got a problem.